Humbly report, sir, I understand. I've already told you to shut your mug. Did you hear? Humbly report, sir, I heard that I must shut my mug. Himmel Herrgott, then shut it. When I've given you orders, you know very well you must stop talking rot. Humbly report, sir, I know well I must stop talking rot. The military gentleman exchanged glances and called the sergeant major. Take this man to the office, said the senior staff doctor, pointing to Sweik, and wait for our announcement and report. At the garrison, they'll knock all this drivel out of his head. The fellow's as fit as a fiddle. He's only shamming, and into the bargain he talks rot and tries to make fun of his superiors. He thinks they're only here for his amusement and that the whole war's a joke, a laughing matter. At the garrison, Sweik, they'll soon show you that war's no picnic. Sweik went off with the sergeant major to the office, and on the way through the courtyard hummed to himself, I always thought that war was fun. A week or two, and home I'd run. And while in the office, the duty officer was bellowing at Sweik that bastards like him ought to be shot, and the wards upstairs, the commission was making short shrift with the malingerers. Of 70 patients, only 2 got through. One had had a leg torn off by a shell, and the other suffered from genuine bone decay. These 2 were the only ones who did not hear the word Taglich. All the others, including even the 3 dying of consumption, were certified fit for service at the front. Whereupon the senior staff doctor did not deny himself the opportunity of making a speech. His speech was interlarded with the most variegated oaths and was brief in content. They were all swine and dung, and only if they were to fight valiantly for his imperial majesty would they be fit to return to human society, and after the war to be forgiven for having tried to get out of military service and been malingerers. He himself, however, didn't believe that this would happen and thought the gallows were in store for them all. A youngish army doctor whose soul was still pure and uncorrupted asked the senior staff doctor if he might say a few words too. His speech distinguished itself from that of his superior by its optimism and naivete. He spoke in German. He dwelt long on the fact that each of them who was leaving the hospital to join their regiments at the front must be conqueror and knight. He was convinced they would be skillful in handling their weapons on the battlefield and honorable in all their dealings in war and in private life. They would be unconquerable warriors, mindful of the glory of Radetzky and Prince Eugene of Savoy. With their blood, they would fertilize the vast fields of glory of the monarchy and victoriously accomplish the task to which history had predestined them. With fearless courage, despising their lives, they would charge forward under the bullet-ridden ensigns of their regiments towards new glories and new victories. Later in the corridor, the senior staff doctor said to this naive man, My dear colleague, I can assure you it's all a complete waste of time. Why, not even Radetzky or your Prince Eugene of Savoy could make soldiers out of bastards like them. Whether you speak to them like an angel or a devil, it all comes to the same thing. They're a gang of crooks. Chapter 9, Sweik in the Garrison Jail. For people who did not want to go to the front, the last refuge was the garrison jail. I once knew a probationary teacher who was a mathematician and did not want to serve in the artillery and shoot people. So he stole a lieutenant's watch to get himself into the garrison jail. He did this deliberately. War neither impressed nor enchanted him. Shooting at the enemy and killing with shrapnel and shells equally unhappy probationary teachers of mathematics serving on the other side seemed to him sheer idiocy. I'm going to reread that. It's the quote of the book so far. For people who did not want to go to the front, the last refuge was the garrison jail. I once knew a probationary teacher who was a mathematician and did not want to serve in the artillery and shoot people. So he stole a lieutenant's watch to get himself into the garrison jail. He did this deliberately. War neither impressed nor enchanted him. Shooting at the enemy and killing with shrapnel and shells equally unhappy probationary teachers of mathematics serving on the other side seemed to him sheer idiocy. I don't want to be hated for my brutality, he said to himself, and calmly stole the watch. First they examined his mental condition, but when he said he wanted to get rich quick, they sent him off to the garrison jail. There were a lot more people like that sitting there for theft or fraud, idealists and non-idealists. There were people who saw the war as a way of increasing their income, those various quartermaster sergeants at the base or at the front who were up to all possible kinds of fiddles with messing and pay, and also petty thieves who were 1,000 times more honest than the blackguards who sent them there. And soldiers sat there who had committed various other offenses of a purely military kind, such as insubordination, attempted mutiny, or desertion. Then came the political prisoners who were in a special class. 80% of them were utterly innocent, and of these 99% were sentenced. I'm going to reread that again too. I don't want to be hated for my brutality, he said to himself, and calmly stole the watch. First they examined his mental condition, but when he said he wanted to get rich quick, they sent him off to the garrison jail. There were a lot more people like that sitting there for theft or fraud, idealists and non-idealists. There were people who saw the war as a way of increasing their income, those various quartermaster sergeants at the base or at the front who were up to all possible kinds of fiddles with messing and pay, and also petty thieves who were 1,000 times more honest than the blackguards who sent them there. And soldiers sat there who had committed various other offenses of a purely military kind, such as insubordination, attempted mutiny, or desertion. Then came the political prisoners who were in a special class. 80% of them were utterly innocent, and of these 99% were sentenced. The whole establishment of the office of the judge advocate was magnificent. Every state on the brink of total political, economic, and moral collapse has an establishment like this. The aura of past power and glory clings to its courts, police, gendarmerie, and venal pack of informers. The whole establishment of the office of the judge advocate was magnificent. Every state on the brink of total political, economic, and moral collapse has an establishment like this. The aura of past power and glory clings to its courts, police, gendarmerie, and venal pack of informers. In every military unit, Austria had her snoopers who spied on their comrades, sleeping on the same bunks with them and sharing their bread on the march. In addition, the garrison jail was supplied with material by the state security, Messrs. Klima, Slavacek and Company, the military censorship, consigned here the writers of letters exchanged between the men at the front and the despairing ones they had left behind at home. The gendarmes even brought here poor old peasant pensioners who had written letters to the front, and the court-martial jugged them for 12 years as a punishment for their words of consolation and their descriptions of the misery at home. From the Hradčany garrison, the road led through Brevnov to the drill ground at Motol. Along it, a procession would pass, headed by a man under military escort with his hands manacled and followed by a cart with a coffin on it. On the drill ground was heard the curt order, "Fire!" And then in all the regiments and battalions they read out the regimental order that one more man had been shot for mutiny during call-up when his wife, not bearing to be parted from him, had been slashed by the captain's saber. And in the garrison jail, the triumvirate, Staff Warder Slavic, Captain Linhart, and Sergeant Major Repa, alias the Hangman, were getting on with the job. How many did they flog in solitary confinement? Perhaps in the Republic today, Captain Linhart is still a captain. I hope for his sake his years of service in the garrison jail will count towards his pension. They do in the case of Slavacek and Klima from the state security. Repa has returned to civilian life and carries on his profession as a master builder. Perhaps he is a member of one of the patriotic societies in the Republic. Under the Republic staff, Warder Slavik became a thief and is today in jail. The poor man could not set himself up so comfortably in the Republic as the other military gentlemen did. It was quite natural that when he took charge of Sweik, Staff Warder Slavik gave him a look of mute reproach, as much as to say, "So you've got tarnished reputation too. If you got yourself here, well, love, we'll sweeten your stay here, as we do for anyone who's fallen into our hands. And you know that our hands aren't exactly the ladies' kind." And to add weight to this look, he thrust his muscular fat fist under Spike's nose and said, "Sniff that, you bastard." Spike sniffed it and observed, "I wouldn't like to get that in the nose. It smells of the graveyard." This calm, considered remark appealed to the staff warder. "Hey," he said, prodding Spike in the stomach with his fist, "and stand straight. What's that you got in your pockets? If it's cigarettes, you can leave them here. And hand over your money, too, so that they don't steal it off you. Haven't you got anything else? Honest to God? Don't tell lies now. You'll be punished for lying." "Where shall we put him?" asked Sergeant Major Repa. "In number 16, the staff warder decided. Among the pants. Don't you see that Captain Linhart has marked his papers? Guard and watch closely." "Oh, yes, indeed," he declared solemnly to Spike. "Vermin are treated like vermin. If anyone gets awkward, we drag him off to the solitary. There we break all his ribs and leave him until he's a goner. That's our right. Like we did with that butcher. Eh, Repa?" "Yes, he gave us a lot of trouble, sir," replied Sergeant Major Repa dreamily. "What a body. I stamped on him for more than 5 minutes until his ribs began to crack and blood poured out of his mouth. And he lived for another 10 days. A really tough customer." "So you see, you bastard, what happens here when anyone starts getting awkward or trying to escape," said Staff Warder Slavik, concluding his pedagogical discourse. "It's sheer suicide, and by the way, suicide's punished too. And God help you, you miserable shit, if when there's an inspection you take it into your head to complain about anything. When there's an inspection and you're asked, 'Have you any complaints?' you have to stand at attention, you stinking vermin, salute and answer, 'Humbly report none. I'm completely satisfied.' Now what are you going to say, you lousy oaf? Repeat what I said." "Humbly report none. I'm completely satisfied," Spike repeated with such a sweet expression on his face that the staff warder was misled and took it for honest zeal and decency. "Now strip down to your pants and go to number 16, he said affably, without adding either shit, stinking vermin, or lousy oaf as he usually did. In number 16, Spike encountered 20 men in their pants. They were all men whose papers had been marked "Guard and watch closely," and who were now being watched very carefully so that they should not escape. If those pants had been clean and there had been no bars on the windows, you might at first glance have supposed that you were in the dressing room of some bathing establishment. Sergeant Major Repa handed Spike over to the cell commander, a hairy fellow in an unbuttoned shirt. He wrote Spike's name down on a piece of paper which was hanging on the wall and said to him, "Tomorrow we're going to have a show. They'll take us to the chapel to hear a sermon. We shall all of us be standing in our pants right under the pulpit. There'll be some fun." As in all prisons and penitentiaries, the local chapel was very popular in the garrison jail too. Not that enforced attendance at it brought the congregation nearer to God, or that the prisoners learned more about morality. There could be no question of any nonsense of that kind. The service and sermons were a marvelous thrill in the boredom of the garrison jail. It was not a question of getting nearer to God, but of the hope of finding on the way in the corridor or in the courtyard a fag end or a cigar end, a little fag end lying about hopelessly in a spittoon or somewhere in the dust on the floor. Stole the show, and God was nowhere. That little stinking object triumphed over God and the salvation of the soul. Then on top of that came the sermon, which was a rare picnic for the chaplain. Otto Katz was really a lovely man. His sermons were unusually exciting and amusing, and they refreshed the boredom of the garrison jail. He could drivel so beautifully about the infinite grace of God and give uplift to the abandoned prisoners and disgraced men. He could let off such resounding oaths from the pulpit and the altar. He could roar out his ita missa est so gorgeously at the altar, conduct the whole service in such an original way, and turn the whole order of the Holy Mass upside down. When he was thoroughly drunk, he could invent entirely new prayers and a new Holy Mass, even a liturgy of his own, something which was quite unheard of here. And then what a scream when he sometimes slipped and fell over with the chalice, the Holy Sacrament or the Missal, loudly accusing the server from the prison unit of having purposely tripped him up and dealing him out solitary confinement or irons before the Holy Communion itself. And the recipient was happy because it was an inseparable part of the whole pantomime in the prison chapel. He played a leading part in the piece and acquitted himself honorably in it. The chaplain, Otto Katz, the most perfect of army chaplains, was a Jew. By the way, there's nothing odd about that. Archbishop Cohn was a Jew too, and a friend of Machar into the bargain. Chaplain Otto Katz had an even more colorful past than the famous Archbishop Cohn. He studied at the Commercial Academy and served in the forces as a one-year volunteer. He mastered so thoroughly bills of exchange and the laws about them that within a year he brought the firm of Katz and Company Limited to such a glorious and successful bankruptcy that old Mr. Katz went off to North America, pulling off a kind of settlement unbeknown to his creditors or his partner, who went off to Argentine. At the turn of the century, the Czech poet J.S. Machar, 1864 to 1942, defended Dr. Theodor Cohn, Archbishop of Olomouc, against attacks on his Jewish origin. And so, after having disinterestedly bestowed the firm of Katz and Co. upon North and South America, young Otto Katz found himself in the position of a man who had no hopes of inheriting anything, had nowhere to lay his head, and must therefore join the army. Before this, however, Otto Katz had hit upon an awfully fine idea. He had himself baptized. He turned to Christ to help him make a career. He applied to him in absolute confidence that this was a business transaction between him and the Son of God. He was solemnly baptized in the Emmaus Monastery in Prague. Father Alban himself, Alban Schalk-Leitner, a Benedictine monk, said later to have emigrated to Germany and become a Nazi, dipped him in the font. It was a magnificent spectacle. It was attended by a pious major from the regiment where Otto Katz served, an old maid from the Institute of Gentlewomen on the Hradčany, and a large jowled representative of the consistory who acted as his godfather. The officer's examination went off well, and the newly fledged Christian Otto Katz stayed in the army. At first he thought he was going to do well and even wanted to study on staff courses. But one day he got drunk and went into a monastery, gave up the sword and donned the cassock. He was received by the archbishop on the Hradčany and managed to get himself into the seminary. Before his ordination, he got drunk as a fish in a very respectable house served by ladies in the alley behind U Vejvodu, and straight from a whirl of voluptuous pleasures and delights went to have himself ordained. After his ordination, he went to his regiment to try and get them to help him get a job. After he was appointed chaplain, he bought a horse, rode through the streets of Prague, and took a merry part in all the drinking bouts with the officers of his regiment. In the corridor of the house where he lived, the curses of dissatisfied creditors could often be heard. He also brought home tarts from off the streets or sent his orderly to fetch them. He loved playing Farble, an illegal Austrian card game, and there were certain conjectures and presumptions that he cheated, but nobody caught him out with an ace hidden in the wide sleeves of his chaplain's cassock. In officer circles, they called him Holy Father. He never prepared his sermons beforehand, and in this he differed from his predecessor, who also used to visit the garrison jail. The latter was possessed by the fixed idea that the men in the garrison jail could be reformed from the pulpit. This venerable chaplain piously rolled his eyes, explaining to the prisoners that prostitutes should be reformed and care for unmarried mothers improved, and held forth about the bringing up of illegitimate children. His sermons were of an abstract character with no connection whatsoever with life today. They were very boring. Chaplain Otto Katz, on the contrary, delivered sermons which everybody looked forward to. It was a festive moment when they led the number 16s to the chapel in their pants, because to allow them to be dressed entailed the risk that one of them might escape. They put these 20 angels in white pants right under the pulpit. Some of them, upon whom fortune had smiled, were chewing fag-ends which they had found on the way, because, as was only natural, they had no pockets and there was nowhere to put them. Around them stood the rest of the garrison prisoners and gazed with relish at the 20 men in pants beneath the pulpit. The chaplain climbed up into it, clinking his spurs. "Attention!" he shouted. "Let us pray. Forward after me, repeating what I say. And you at the back there, you bastard, don't snot into your hands. You're in the temple of the Lord. I'll have you locked up for it. I wonder if you haven't forgotten the Lord's Prayer, you oafs. All right, let's try it." "Well, I knew it wouldn't go. What the hell does the Lord's Prayer mean to you? All you care about is 2 helpings of meat and bean salad, stuffing yourself up, lying on your backsides on your bunk, and picking your nose without a thought for the Lord. Isn't that right?" He stared down from the pulpit at the 20 white angels in pants who were thoroughly enjoying themselves like all the rest. At the back they were playing Flesh, a game among soldiers where one soldier bares his buttocks and the others hit him from behind. If he can guess which of the others has hit him, that soldier has to change places with him. "This is first class," Sweik whispered to his neighbor, who was suspected of having taken an axe and chopped off all his mate's fingers to get him out of the military service at the price of 3 crowns. "You wait," was the answer. "Today he's properly oiled again. He'll tell us once more about the thorny path of sin." True enough, the chaplain was in an excellent mood that day. He did not know himself why he was doing it, but he continually leaned out of the pulpit and nearly overbalanced. "Sing something, boys," he shouted down to them. "Or do you want me to teach you a new song? Now sing with me. Of all people in the world, I love my love the best. I'm not her only visitor, I queue up with the rest. Her lovers are innumerable. Now tell me, pray, her name? It is the Virgin Mary." "You'll never learn it, you bastards," continued the chaplain. "I'd like to have you all shot, do you understand? I state this from this holy place of God, you scoundrels, because God's a thing that's not afraid of you, and I'll give you hell, and all because you hesitate to turn to Christ and you'd rather go along the thorny path of sin." "Now it's coming. He's properly oiled," whispered Sweik's neighbor delightedly. "The thorny path of sin, you bloody half-wits, is the path of the battle against vice. You are the prodigal sons who prefer to loll about in quad rather than return to the bosom of our Father. But lift up your eyes to heaven on high, and you will be victorious, and peace will abide in your souls, you gutter snipes." "I'd be glad if the person at the back would stop snorting. He's not a horse and he's not in a stable. He's in the temple of the Lord. Let me tell you that, ducks. Now then, where was I? Yes," he continued in German, "about peace in your souls. Very good. Bear in mind, you cattle, that you're human beings and that you must look through the dark clouds into the wide spaces and know that everything here lasts only for a moment while God is for eternity." Very good, wasn't it, gentlemen? He lapsed into German again. "I ought to pray for you day and night, that merciful God, you bloody imbeciles, may infuse your cold hearts with his spirit and wash away your sins with his holy mercy, that you may be his forevermore and that he may love you forever, you blackguards. But that's just where you're wrong. I'm not going to lead you into paradise." The chaplain hiccuped. "No, I won't," he repeated obstinately. "I won't do anything for you. I won't dream of it, because you are incorrigible scum. On your ways you will not be guided by the grace of the Lord. The breath of God's love will not be wafted onto you, because the Lord would not dream of having anything to do with such twisters as you. Do you hear that, you down there below in those pants?" 20 pairs of pants looked up and said, as with one voice, "Humbly report, sir, we hear." "It's not enough just to hear," the chaplain continued. "Dark is the cloud of life, and God's smile will not take away your woe, you bloody apes, for God's goodness has its bounds too. And don't choke yourself, you bounder at the back there, or I'll have you locked up until you're black in the face. And you down there, don't think that you're in the tap room." God is supremely merciful, but only to decent people and not to the scum of human society who won't be guided by his laws or by service regulations. That's what I wanted to tell you. You don't know how to pray. You think that going to chapel is some kind of entertainment like being at a theater or cinema. But I'll knock that out of your head so that you don't think of that. So you don't think I'm here to amuse you and bring pleasure to your lives. I'll send each one of you into solitary confinement. That's what I'll do, you sods. I'm wasting my time on you and I see it's all quite useless. If the field marshal himself or the archbishop had been here, you wouldn't reform, you wouldn't incline to the Lord. But all the same, one of these days you'll remember how I was trying to do you some good. Among the 20 pants a sob could be heard. It was Sweik, who had burst into tears. The chaplain looked down. There stood Sweik, rubbing his eyes with his fist. Round him were signs of gleeful appreciation. Pointing to Sweik, the chaplain continued, "Let every one of you take an example from this man. What is he doing? He's crying. Don't cry, I tell you, don't cry. Do you want to reform? That's not so easy for you, my lad. You're crying now, but when you go back to your cell, you'll be just as big a bastard as you were before. You'll have to think a lot about the unending grace and mercy of God. You'll have to work hard to see that your sinful soul finds the right path to tread in this world. Just now we saw a man who wants to be reformed bursting into tears, and what do the rest of you do? Nothing at all. Over there, someone's chewing something as though his parents had been ruminants. And over there, they're searching for lice in their shirts in the temple of the Lord. Can't you do your scratching at home? Must you reserve it for the divine service? And staff warder, you never notice anything either. After all, you're all soldiers and not a lot of half-witted civilians. You've got to believe as befit soldiers, even if you're in a church. For Christ's sake, get on with searching for God and do your searching for lice at home. That's all I've got to say, you gutter snipes. And I request you to behave yourselves at Mass, so that it doesn't happen as it did last time when people in the back rows were bartering government linen for bread and then gorging it during the elevation of the host. The chaplain came down from the pulpit and went off to the vestry, followed by the staff warder. After a while, the staff warder came out, went straight up to Sweik, pulled him out of the group of 20 pants, and led him away to the vestry. The chaplain was sitting very comfortably on a table and rolling a cigarette. When Sweik came in, the chaplain said, "Oh, here you are. I've been thinking it all over, and I believe I've seen through you. Do you understand, you bastard? It's the first case I've had of anyone blubbing in the church here." He jumped down from the table and, standing beneath a huge, gloomy painting of St. Francis of Sales, jerked at Sweik's shoulder and shouted, "Confess that you only blubbed for fun, you sod." And St. Francis of Sales gazed inquiringly down from his portrait at Sweik. From another painting on the other side, a martyr gazed open-mouthed at him, while Roman mercenaries were sawing through his buttocks. During this operation, no suffering could be detected on the martyr's face, nor the joy nor the glory of martyrdom either. He only stared open-mouthed as though he wanted to say, "How on earth did this happen to me? What on earth are you doing to me, gentlemen?" I'm going to reread that. It reminds me, well, Gogol. Dead Souls came out in like 1842. So this would be a ripoff of Gogol, but I mean, it's so much like Gogol writing about paintings or looking down. And St. Francis of Sales gazed inquiringly down from his portrait at Sweik. From another painting on the other side, a martyr gazed open-mouthed at him while Roman mercenaries were sawing through his buttocks. During this operation, no suffering could be detected on the martyr's face, nor the joy nor the glory of martyrdom either. He only stared open-mouthed as though he wanted to say, "How on earth did this happen to me? What on earth are you doing to me, gentlemen?" "Humbly report, sir," said Sweik deliberately, staking everything on a single card. "I confess to God Almighty and to you, venerable Father, who are God's deputy, that I was really only blubbing for fun. I saw that for your preaching, you needed a reformed sinner, and that you were looking for him in vain in your sermon. And so I really wanted to give you a pleasure so that you shouldn't think that there weren't any just men left, and at the same time I wanted to have a little fun on my own to get some relief." The chaplain looked searchingly at Sveik's artless countenance. The sunbeam played on the melancholy face of St. Francis of Sales and warmed the staring eyes of the martyr on the opposite wall. "I'm beginning to take a fancy to you," said the chaplain, sitting on the table again. "Which regiment do you belong to?" He began to hiccup. "Humbly report, sir, I belong and don't belong to the 91st Regiment, and I haven't the faintest idea how I really stand." "And what are you in jail here for?" inquired the chaplain, continuing to hiccup. From the chapel were wafted in this direction the sounds of a harmonium, which was a substitute for an organ. The musician, a teacher who had been jailed for desertion, wailed out on the harmonium the most mournful hymn tunes. With the hiccuping of the chaplain, these sounds blended to form a new Doric scale. "Humbly report, sir, I really don't know why I'm in jail here, but I don't complain. It's just my bad luck. My intentions are always the best, and in the end, I always get the worst of it, just like that martyr there in the picture." The chaplain looked at the picture, smiled, and said, "Yes, I've really taken to you. I must ask the judge advocate about you, and I won't stay talking to you any longer. I must get that holy mass off my chest. About turn! Dismiss!" When Sweik returned to his family group of pants beneath the pulpit, he replied very dryly and laconically to their questions about what the chaplain had wanted of him in the vestry. "He's sozzled." The chaplain's new performance, the Holy Mass, was followed by all with close attention and unconcealed enjoyment. One man under the pulpit even bet that the monstrance would fall out of the chaplain's hands. He wagered his whole portion of bread against two across the jaw and won his bet. What inspired the souls of everyone in the chapel at the sight of the chaplain's ministration was not the mysticism of the faithful or the piety of true Catholics. It was the feeling we have in the theater when we do not know what the play is about, when the plot develops and we breathlessly wait to see how it is going to end. They were absorbed in the scene which the chaplain with great devotion presented to them before the altar. They surrendered completely to the aesthetic enjoyment of the vestments which the chaplain had put on inside out, and watched all the happenings at the altar with ardent sympathy and enthusiasm.